Before the likes of David Cornsweet, Henry Cavill, and even Brandon Routh graced our screens as the iconic Man of Steel, there was a surprising name linked to the role: Nicolas Cage. If you've been keeping up with superhero movies like The Flash, this might not come as a shocker. Back in the 1990s, Cage was all set to step into Superman.
No, we can just do something different. No, yeah, that's fine. I'd like to try that.
Oh yeah.
Try that.
I like the idea.
We'll get off of this after. We're here.
The film, which sadly never saw the light of day, was titled Superman Lives. It would have been directed by the visionary director Tim Burton. Known for his unique and gothic cinematic style, Tim Burton, widely known for some of his successful films like Edward Scissorhands and The Batman. Can you just imagine the blend of Burton's dark, whimsical touch with the Superman lore? But here's where things get even more interesting. The storyline of Superman Lives was said to be a roller coaster of emotions. Not only will we have seen Nicolas Cage battling it out with the iconic villains like Brainiac and Doomsday, but the plot also revolved around Superman's death and his subsequent resurrection. The film actually would have been loosely based on the Death of Superman comic book, which released between 1992 and 1993. Today we'll be taking a look at the film, the concept art, and what went wrong during pre-production that led to its unfortunate cancellation. Welcome to Superpedia, your #1 source for everything super. The 90s were a transformative period for Superman. Following his iconic comic book death, there were plans for a titled Superman Reborn. While many scripts floated around, one that stands out is by Dan Gilroy. Yes, the same Dan Gilroy who later gave us gems like Nightcrawler. His vision for Superman Reborn, which was actually the original name for the film but was later changed to Superman Lives due to creative differences, was not just about high-flying action, but a deep dive into the emotional and relationship dynamics of Lois and Clark. Picture this. The story intensifies as it builds up to the birth of Lois and Clark's child, a beacon of hope and legacy, destined to take up the mantle of the new Superman. Now, what's a Superman story without a formidable adversary? Enter Brainiac, one of Superman's most iconic foes. In his narrative, he wasn't just a side character, but the mastermind orchestrating events from the shadows. For those unfamiliar, Brainiac isn't just any villain. He's the cold and calculating entity responsible for the destruction of Superman's home planet, Krypton. His inclusion promised a tale of revenge, legacy, and redemption. It's worth noting that the journey from comic to screenplay is never straightforward. Superman Lives underwent numerous rewrites, each attempting to capture the essence of the characters and the gravity of the narrative. Gilroy's script was just one of many, but it offered a fresh perspective focusing on character development and emotional depth, rather than just action-packed sequences. Burton is known for his eccentric and unique style, and Superman Lives was set to be no different. From unconventional costume designs to bizarre plot elements like Brainiac battling polar bears and a robot sidekick, the film promised a fresh take on the superhero genre. There were even plans for Lex Luthor to summon aliens, in a climactic battle where Brainiac and Superman would join forces, only to turn on each other. With John Peters and Kevin Smith as the producers and Nicolas Cage cast to play Superman, there were rumors that Christopher Walken would portray Brainiac, which would have been an interesting casting to see on the big screen. The casting considerations for Lois Lane include Courtney Cox and Sandra Bullock being the first choice. For the sake of avoiding confusion, we'll be reading the 1997 Superman Lives screenplay, written by Kevin Smith. Amidst the vastness of the cosmos, the eerie school ship of Brainiac prowls, ensnaring an unsuspecting alien vessel. This act unveils the dark, parasitic nature of Brainiac, a being who thrives by consuming others. Down on Earth, the ambitious Lex Luthor, standing at the helm of LexCorp, sends ripples across the universe with a broadcast. His message, an invitation to extraterrestrial entities, inadvertently piques the interest of Brainiac, especially with the tantalizing mention of a Kryptonian. The bustling city of Metropolis becomes a stage for a philosophical clash. Lex Luthor and the reporter Lois Lane engage in a heated discourse over Superman's place in their world. To Lex, the Man of Steel represents an obstacle to humanity's progression and evolution. Lois, on the other hand, sees Superman as a symbol of hope, a guiding light in their often tumultuous world. However, the city's undercurrents of tension surge to the surface when the governor becomes the target of an assassination attempt by Deadshot. Superman swoops in, thwarting the attempt, but this act only fuels Lex's growing resentment, viewing Superman's actions as meddling. Lex begins to weave a web of plots against the Kryptonian hero. As the story unfolds, Brainiac's sinister objectives crystallize. He hungers for the unparalleled might of Superman, aiming to harness it for his own nefarious purposes. Superman grapples with a personal crisis. The loss of his iconic powers in his vulnerable state, he encounters the Eradicator, a mysterious Kryptonian entity who offers a glimmer of hope, the potential restoration of his abilities. The city's heartbeat quickens as Doomsday, a monstrous threat, casts his shadow over Metropolis. The ensuing confrontations are intense, pushing Superman to his limits. His vulnerabilities come to the fore when he is discovered within a Kryptonian resuscitation chamber. Here, guided by the Eradicator, he embarks on a journey of self-discovery, delving deep into his Kryptonian roots. The looming menace of Doomsday grows, culminating in epic confrontations that shake the very core of Metropolis. Aided by the Eradicator, Superman faces these trials, all while wrestling with questions of his own identity and his evolving relationship with Lois. In the story's climax, Superman rises, taking bold steps to thwart Brainiac's malevolent designs. His most symbolic act is the destruction of the Shadowcaster, ushering sunlight back to Earth. This moment, radiant with hope, heralds a new beginning for Metropolis. However, the tale doesn't conclude without one final twist. Lex, in a desperate bid for freedom, attempts a daring escape, only to find himself face to face with Superman. As the dust settles on a rejuvenated Metropolis, the city is left to ponder deeper questions. The nature of trust, the complexities of identity, and a timeless debate on the role of heroes in shaping society. Now that we know what the film would have been about, what went wrong? Now every film has its share of backstage drama, and Superman Lives was no exception. John Peters, who had previous disagreements with Burton during Batman '89, imposed his vision on Kevin Smith, leading to a hectic production phase. Imagine a Superman film where the hero doesn't fly or even wear his iconic suit. That was Peters' vision. Warner Brothers, in a move to assert creative control and fiscal responsibility, pushed Tim Burton to part ways with the original writer. They then brought in a new writer to polish the script and bring in the budget, all while various pre-production elements such as set construction and costume design were well underway. Tim Burton's own Batman has set a darker tone for superhero films, a departure from the campier adaptations of earlier decades. Superman Lives promised to be a unique take on the Superman mythos, especially with Byrne directing it. In comparison to other superhero films of the time, Superman Lives had the potential to stand out due to its unique creative team and vision. The late 1990s saw a range of superhero films. However, none had the iconic status and recognition of Superman, which made the anticipation for Superman Lives even more significant. The 90s were an era of rapid technological advancement, but visual effects had their limitations. Byrne's grand vision for Superman Lives, with its fantastical elements, posed a significant challenge. Technology of the time might not have done justice to Byrne's imagination. One of the most fascinating aspects of this story is the redirection of resources. The budget allocated for Superman Lives, which had included some truly imaginative and unique elements like the infamous giant spider, found itself redirected to another project, Wild Wild West. But fast forward nearly 25 years, Kevin Smith's dream finally became reality. In the 2023 movie The Flash, with Nicolas Cage donning the Superman Lives suit, while battling a giant mechanical spider. Were you looking forward to seeing this movie on the big screen? And do you think Tim Burton was the right choice to tell Superman's story? It's kind of funny because, just like we've seen this past decade, Warner Brothers was grappling a string of box office failures at the time, adding yet another layer of pressure to the project. With mounting concerns about the film's budget and the potential disconnect with audiences, the studio eventually pulled the plug on Superman Lives, despite already having invested millions into development. It's a prime example of how the nature of the film industry can impact even the most promising projects.